Hey guys, I'm Debbie, and today we're going to talk about boundaries. Boundaries. We could talk about boundaries for the next 27 days, and we would still have things to talk about. But alas, I'm going to keep it short to a couple of minutes. Boundaries. Boundaries protect wholeness. Boundaries protect wholeness. It's almost like you're drawing a circle around you and you're declaring that everything inside of that circle is holy. And so if you're gonna come into the circle, take off your shoes. That's boundaries. Except what has happened for most of us, boundaries were not only non-existent, but were made very, very wrong. And we're born knowing boundaries. I mean, think about a toddler. You try to love a toddler and you just want to squish them and they're like, no, get off me. Or think about a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old. I was at my niece's birthday party and I was like, oh, can I have a hug? Can Thea get a hug? And she was like, no. They know their boundaries. They know when they want to be touched, when they don't want to be touched. But think about that. Because in that moment, I was cool with it. I was like, all right, go on with your bad self. Hug me later when you feel like it. In that moment, my mom grabbed her by the arm and she's like, no, give your aunt a hug. So in that moment, mom was totally not coming from a bad place. Like, she wasn't deliberately trying to dishonor this 5-year-old's boundary. She was just like, oh my God, hug your tia. Like, it's fine. Like, love her. What she didn't get was that in that moment, what she's teaching that 5-year-old is that it's not about considering what you need or what you want. You get to appease to others. So your boundary is invalid. It doesn't count. Or in other extremes, the boundary might have actually been made wrong. So think about if you were a teenager and you wanted your space, so you closed the door to your bedroom and your parents barged in and you're not allowed to close the door, and how dare you walk away from a conversation or whatever that might have been. Now, not only are boundaries, essentially we're learning is we don't get to have boundaries, but now we might also be learning the boundary is wrong. The boundary creates conflict. And here's the thing. If all of a sudden you're setting boundaries in 2020 with your family, the victory isn't in how they respond to you. The victory is in you having set a boundary to begin with. Because the reality is that your boundaries it's going to bring up the emotional immaturity of your family and your caregivers, because they might not get it, especially if you come from a context where boundaries weren't honored or really understood or respected. The victory is not in other people's reactions. It's in setting the boundary to begin with. Because you setting a boundary is now you showing up and using your voice to honor your needs and your desires. Again, boundaries protect wholeness. It's really easy to go into wronging yourself for setting a boundary if other people's reactions to you are immature, angry, upset, irritated. The victory is not in other people's reaction. It's in you setting the boundary to begin with. Because it means that you're standing in a space of worthiness, of wholeness, and now you're showing up for yourself with new tools, new consciousness, and you're essentially teaching people how to treat you. And if they can't treat you the way that you desire, they're not wrong for it. It just means that you can't come in the circle because you're not willing to take off your shoes. And again, we're not wronging the way that we were brought up. We're not wronging the caregiver. They did the best they could with the tools and the consciousness that they had available. My mom was coming from a place of love when she's like, hey, Luna, hug your tia. And when she grabbed her and in that space disregarded her boundary of I don't want to be touched right now. She wasn't being malicious. And got it. We're not here to wrong our past. It was just an ineffective response. Okay. And so rather than judging, it really is simply a space for, again, awareness and understanding to happen, and get that based on the boundaries that you set. It might mean that some relationships are only going to be welcome in your porch. Okay, you can come in this close, but you can't come in my living room because we don't have that relationship and you're not able to honor the boundaries that I'm establishing. So yeah, I want relationship with you, but I'm definitely not going to be your partner. I'm definitely not going to be intimate with you because you can't honor my boundaries. But we can be friends because you can honor these boundaries. So again, you're welcome onto my porch, but not necessarily into my living room. There's varieties, and that's really going to be you determining what relationships get to be let in closer and which get to be a little outside, a little more distant, again, based on their maturity and their awareness and their ability to honor and respect your boundaries. Because usually people who have great boundaries honor and celebrate other people who have boundaries. Great, you're teaching me how to treat you, got it. People without boundaries are probably going to resist boundaries, and that might show up as irritability, frustration, anger, judgment, belittlement. And to those people, porch. To those who can honor them, hey, come on in, right? So it's really a learning process. And again, the victory isn't in how people react, because you're not responsible for other people's emotional well-being. It really is in you having set the boundary to begin with, because it's now using your voice to be a stand for yourself. It's you showing up as your rescuer. It's you holding yourself as worthy, as valuable. That's incredible, especially if you come from a context and a background where boundaries were non-existent. That takes courage. That takes a lot of awareness, and it really is so worthy of being celebrated. So if you've been setting boundaries and people haven't been reacting all that great to it, it's not about their reaction. It's not your responsibility to regulate other people's emotions. Your responsibility is to yourself. And think about it this way. If you had a plate and a quarter of it was filled with really moldy salad, and you really wanted fresh fruit, you have to clear out that salad to make room for that fresh fruit, because the rest of the plate is taken. If what you desire is healthy, intimate, connected relationship, then you get to clear out the relationships in your life that are toxic and unhealthy and codependent. And setting boundaries usually begins to weed out the relationships that are no longer meeting you at your new consciousness and your new vibration. And that's okay. They're not wrong. You're not wrong. Think about it this way. You might have met at a time where energetically you were compatible, but the more you cultivate self-awareness, self-love, compassion, now your energies are in different spaces. Let them fall away with gratitude. Thank you. You served your purpose in my life, and I've served my purpose in yours. And in that space, now that the wilted salad is gone, you can make room for that fresh fruit, for those relationships that you desire. And because life isn't happening to us, life is happening from us, your vibration will attract relationships that can meet you in that healthy space. Another way to think about it is sometimes we walk through energetic portals and some relationships don't walk through it with us. It's not that they're wrong and we're right, or that we're wrong and they're right. It simply means that we're now in two different vibrations, two different energies, and it's okay. I honor you, especially if you are now in the space of setting boundaries and learning what those are for you, because it takes a lot of strength, a lot of cultivating that worthiness and an awareness to be able to start expressing that and teaching people how to love us. That's courageous, especially if we were the ones who were taught that our boundaries create conflict, that they're not okay. So you're not failing, you're expanding. Amazing. Acknowledge yourself for it. Again, the victory is in having set the boundary, not necessarily in how other people react to it. I always welcome your feedback, questions, thoughts. You know I always say we rise together. I am also going to invite you to go to the link in the bio and sign up for the newsletter if you want more on this, because this is definitely a theme that I'm going to explore a lot more in 2020, and the worlds of relationship, because it's It's what you guys have been asking for. If there's other topics or questions that you want me to speak into, I welcome that as well, because these videos really are being created based on the feedback that I'm getting from you guys and the conversations that I'm having with clients, friends, community members, you. So if there's anything you want me to touch on, speak into it, and I will speak into it. And again, I love you. I really do honor your process, because I know it takes a lot to return to wholeness and to be a stand for you, especially if you were never taught that and don't have a reference point for it. So you're doing an amazing job. It's gonna be messy, and it's okay. That's all for today. I'll check in later. Bye.